Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 137 of Two Left Thumbs, the weekly gaming podcast that always makes up its intros. I'm Puppiez. Joining me this week, it's Lord High Fixer. How you doing, Fix?
Doing well. It's a good Sunday morning here.
Sunday's a good start. Sunday is a good start. Been up to much this week?
Nothing that's great. I mean, work. Work is my job. My real life job is pretty demanding, but other than that, just preparing for the stuff I do every weekend with the stream. But then almost a second job at this point, but it's a job I enjoy.
Always like that. Yeah, you kind of get into a hobby, and it slowly becomes work. And then you're like, there's a point where you're looking at it and you're like, is this too much now? Am I putting too much effort into this thing that I thought I was going to enjoy? And
I think that the difference is like a lot of game streamers they fire up their game and they play their game and then they're done, right? They do their 3 hours or 6 hours or whatever and they're done. And building something educational takes a lot of time for a 2.5 hour, and it really needs to be that. If I go much longer than that, people kind of roll their eyes back out of okay, I've been talked at for a while. But building a 2.5 hour history lesson takes 7 hours of writing on top of a lot of reading, and I don't mind doing any of that stuff, but it certainly takes there's an extra work day in here to get this thing out on top of having a job and having a life. So excuse me.
no, that's okay. So we should probably start with some introductions. I mean, we know your fix.
Yeah.
So we'll ask the age old question I've been asking everyone for every episode. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, everyone out there knows me as Fix. I am one of the, I guess, senior members of a conglomerate of streamers and gamers called Bigtop Outlaws, and we've been promoting the notion of community and support and safe space for each other for almost over a decade now. And streaming became a part of that, as streaming took off. But beyond that, I'm an IT professional. I manage a massive diagnostic imaging archive for a major hospital enterprise in the United States that effectively allows people to get their CTs or X-rays or whatever done in a certain place, and then the doctor doesn't have to be there. The doctor can review those studies at their home if they need to in an emergency, and done things like cut down the time for stroke care and save some lives. And that's what I do for my day job. So I translate that into the IT side of that into streaming. I'm a dad. I've got two kids. They're in college, and I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, and I served in Afghanistan. So I'm in my mid 40s, no longer married, and just kind of enjoying that middle stage of life at this point.
Yeah, we were discussing before. You just your all your kids are kind of out on their own now, and you've got a bit more freedom kicking about, which is I'm jealous entirely. I can't
Yeah,
wait for
you
that
trade that
stage.
off with mobility, though, right? Like I once I hit about 38, 39, I started to feel the fact that I wasn't moving as much as fast as I could, and movement wasn't as pain free as it used to be. There are certainly some trade offs with the freedom that you will enjoy once your raising of and getting kids out into the world is kind of done, and that job doesn't ever stop either. I mean, my kids are majoring in math and physical therapy, and they're still the dad, what do I do phase of things all the time.
Yeah,
Beauty part for us is the kids, fortunately, don't have to pay for college. They were able to have it in their pocket in advance, so they're not going to walk out of it in the U.S. system with a ton of debt or anything like that. So, but yeah, now it's like do my job, and then what do I want to do tonight? And usually it's reading and playing video games.
video games are an optimal choice of spending your time. So back to your streaming. You do things a little differently, like you said. There's kind of the traditional stream out there where you're out there like playing games and entertaining people. You've chosen this educational route of teaching people about space and stuff like that. How did that start? What kind of gave you that idea for that?
Well, there's this funny line between I'm an intellectual. I mean, I don't possess any major college degree, and I always kind of try to make that disclaimer to people like, look, I'm well read, and I've intentionally spent my life reading and learning and going to places where others can teach me. And I truly believe that it's important that when you gain knowledge, you don't hoard that knowledge, that you pass that knowledge on. So it started with a mutual love of space flight and astrophysics, where we did a series, and we still do a series when the time permits, called Bigtop Outlaws Space Administration, where we watch launches together, or in the instance of Perseverance, which was the NASA most recent NASA Martian lander, we watched it come in. We brought up NASA's public tools and discussed what the mission was. Like, there's a thing on that mission called Moxie, which is supposed to test the ability of our engineering to create oxygen from the atmosphere of Mars, which has been successful, which is it's a huge step toward colonizing the planet. But anyway, the idea was I know these things, and there are people who have interest in these things who do not have the time that I have. So that, and it's also something I would be doing anyway. I would be learning these things anyway. So why not take it from me sitting in front of YouTube watching NASA and reading, or me sitting here reading a book about the French Revolution or World War One or whatever, instead of it me just amassing knowledge, let's take it a step further and find out if there's interest and see if there's a group of people that want to come in and absorb this. And then the second really important part was preserving it, taking the output of the streams and what's built, and then making sure there's an archive of it. So if people want to go back and pick up where they missed, or want to start at the beginning of whatever we're talking about, they can always go back and kind of bring them up to where we are now. But history itself was something that I had been pressured. I hate to use that word, but pressured by the community to do for a long time, because I'm in a lot of streams, and people play games like Assassin's Creed's a great example, or Senua Hellblade Sacrifice. These games have historical roots, and I know these historical roots. So I'd be in these streams saying, "Hey, this is this thing," or people play Rise in a Room, and I'd say, "Oh, if you want to parallel this to the real Roman world, this is how this worked." And people were always like, "Why don't you just do something where you teach people this?" And I spent 2.5 years trying to figure out where that logical start point was, because with the history show, the intent is to inform the modern world. Like, I want people to understand why things operate today the way that they do, and where those things are derived from, and then also understand that the way things are today and the way people behave aren't totally new. People were just as insane as they were, in this late 18th century, and draw those lines and say, look at how these French people acted, or look at how these German people acted, or look at how the Mongolians acted in the 13th century, and then look at what happens today. An aspect of what occurs as human nature, so that these kind of light bulbs come on. And that's the idea, is to take what I know from both philosophical and historical learning, and provide insight to a group who may not want to do the reading, but can ingest it well from the perspective of a well-informed storyteller.
That's something I always appreciate. I'm not um known for reading a lot. I do get audiobooks. I think I find that a much more enjoyable kind of format to educate myself. I think it was um a book. I can't remember for the life of me what it was called. I was just trying to look it up. It was basically it was the history of like the amount of times that like humanity had almost brought the world to an end, and and people were nuts, and they haven't changed. Like it kind of went through the generations. Different countries forming, taking over different countries,
Mm.
and then bringing it right up to the point of the Cold War, where we're kind of at this point where we're like, okay, it's either one group of people destroys the world, or the other group destroys the world. Like we have too much power now. We
Yeah,
just we need to stop.
there's a thing in that called the Great Filter. Historically, it came about during the development of the atom bomb, where these theoretical physicists are sitting around in the 1930s and saying, there is this filter that humanity must pass through, where once they obtain the ability to destroy themselves, and they believed it was from the ability to split the atom and create that amount of damage, but they didn't see that previously the Industrial Revolution was probably the thing that is the great filter. Like, can we reverse our own climate problems? But can a civilization, whether humanity or otherwise, out in the universe, can they pass this filter, realize that what they're doing? Can I activate my camera? It is on,
I, I,
but I'll
I, I
turn.
had I had an issue.
There it is.
There we go. It disappeared from me. I tried to reset it
Yeah,
and
it, it,
things went
it
wrong.
clicked off here, and I don't know why. But so the great filter is this thing where once a species society gets to the point of obtaining the ability to kill themselves, can they realize it and stop it? And that's kind of what you were referring to in the book you're talking about. Is it's I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. If you look on the internet, it doesn't look great, but
Yeah, we're kind of I think we're very much on the precipice of that at the moment. I mean, if you just looking on the internet, just like anything, like you see kind of a lot of humanity that's worse. And I think that's just because we have access to so much information now as well. Where we
I
see
think
like
that's
there's
kind of
so much good out there, but
it
there's
kind of
like
slants the perspective though too with respect to
yeah,
internet opinions. Is everyone likes to complain and very few people like to praise in public with accomplishments and achievements. And I'm not a positivity all the time person, because I believe I'm a cynic, but I do believe that most people, when provided a platform, are going to say something bad, because I
oh
go
yeah.
on the internet to vent too, and you get that deluge of it, and it's like, how much of that is really a good sample size of what's actually occurring?
Yeah, it's kind of the loudest minority kind of
Yep.
deal. Always screaming.
There's actually a thing
So
about that historically too. The loudest minority, you can see that even in what we're talking about in the French history series, is where the loud minority is the one that actually brings down the king in France in the late 1790s or the mid 1790s. Is that minority that you know they're the vocal, violent group, and they're the ones that what we talk about now is like, who do you remember from that period? It's that small subset. It's not the passive people who are just trying to go about their daily lives and trying to do good things. We remember the violent motions of things in history, whether that's violence, or that's negative, just commentary that's exacerbating a critical stage in our history. But that's kind of how I see it now.
yeah, that's a pretty good point. It's not something I think on too often. But like you do see it like now, but I hadn't really related it back to history, which is probably why you do what you do, because you are so good at doing that. Just kind of like, oh, this is kind of where this was in this point in history, and this kind of happened as well. What goes into like you said before, like it takes a fair bit of like getting an episode ready or getting a session
Yeah.
ready, because you do it live as well, um which is incredible too, because I don't think I could do that scripted, let alone live. I'd
Well,
bumble my way through a
it's
podcast
scripted
once a
to a
week and
degree.
right,
So
okay.
the process is this: an era that I want to talk about. Like, I'm prepping for a different era right now in my free time. So the way in which we got to the point of being ready for the French Revolution was I had probably 20 books here that I'd read, and that I had tagged the pages in Kindle or on a PDF or whatever, and kind of I started to take notes and just started to memorize where things that were like the critical things, the critical points. The way in which I refer to the French Revolution is like a series of tornadoes. So where do those tornadoes start, and then segueing between those tornadoes. So the episodes are all written in an outline form where it's topic, and then what do I want to talk about under this, just things to key me into what I know. Um, but the reading is the big lift, because I have to get familiar with everything and then pull out the pieces I believe are relevant enough to give the level of detail that kind of the audience wants at this point. But then also keep things flowing, because I want to stay under 2.5 hours when I do one of these shows. So I'm there with the French Revolution. I'm not incorporating very many new sources, even though I just added Mike Duncan's Tale of Two, or Hero of Two Worlds, which is about the Marquis de Lafayette's life. I kind of added that to inform the narrative. Once the knowledge is in my head, it's I have a designated writing day where this is the day where I will write. I like to do it midweek. That gives me time to review it before Saturday, which is when the stream goes off. And it also gives me a break because speaking for 2.5 hours on the topic on a Saturday, I don't want to dive right back in on Sunday or Monday and be right back into it. I want to give myself a little bit of a mental respite. So I I end up starting with, it's nebulous. I start off with, I know I have four basic areas I want to cover every week. And what are those four basic areas? And then how do I not only speak to them with the detail necessary to reflect on the past things we've spoken about, but to set the stage as a storyteller for the next things that I know are coming, but I don't want them to know are coming because it is kind of like telling a story. It's episodic, and unless the viewer knows their history, the things that happen next may be utterly shocking to them. And I want to preserve that cliffhanger spoiler thing for those who don't know. So I get those kind of four topics there, and then I break down the individual pieces, and then the next trick is and a good example is where we are in the French Revolution is talking about the Legislative Assembly, which is the second legislative body that is in the Revolutionary era. And they take up two major issues. I want to talk about those two major issues, and I want to talk about them in the series of steps that they took with respect to those major issues. But I'm also trying to keep a flowing narrative of time that I don't want to have to go back in time over and over and over. I kind of want to progress month to month. So I have to interleave, though they did this on this topic, and then they did this on this topic, and then a major character or major historical figure enters the stage, and how do I biography that person while also maintaining the flow of what I'm talking about? It's not easy to do that, and while the outline tends to be for an episode between 11 and 14 pages, like legal Google Doc, um, it takes between the quickest I've done it when I've been just right on it. It's been a very easy episode. Is 3.5 hours the longest, and generally on average it takes between 6 and 8. It just is a lot of typing, and then the next step past that is I'm doing a live take podcast is how I like to say it is, but it's not just a podcast. It's kind of like this. I have a visual element to it where
Yeah,
I want to say things like, oh, this is where Avignon or Comitat de Venison, which are areas in France. I want to show them where these areas are so they can relate that to the modern day. Like, oh, I've been there or something like that. And so there's a great map archive, which I purchase and license the maps from. I don't like to use anyone's work without, paying them for it. Um, and I bring those up, and then I have, pictures, or paintings at this point in history of all the relevant historical people. And I have to build that every week, just to make sure that it looks from the perspective of the stream preview, it's visible, like people can read it because it's 1080p here, so I can definitely see what I'm talking about. But people on Twitch are going to have a much smaller box that they see things in, so it's about trying to make sure that that presentation is there. But I do everything in that regard in Microsoft Whiteboard, so that when I'm talking about something, I can actually draw lines on maps and circle things and point people to where they need to focus their attention. Your mic cut.
exactly that. It's not exactly something that's in my like common tool set. Um, that sounds cool though. Be able to draw on stuff as you go. That sounds awesome.
When we started history, it was a series of tabs in Google Chrome, and I was just showing them. Here's Louis' picture, and here's the Queen's picture, and then I have some great moderators who provide me with feedback from the viewer's perspective. Like you could probably do this better if you made this a little bit more less jumpy and more static. That you were just manipulating a series, and then it was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Um, and that's when I think we were 3 episodes into this series before I was like, yeah, let's do a whiteboard and build that. And then the other piece of work is I've recreated the opening scene to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure because we kind of theme it as history around the notion of the phone booth and all that. So I've recreated that iconic scene where that crystal comes out of that blue ceiling and stripped all the credits from the movie out of it. And now I add my own credits in. So it's all the historical figures with some sort of witty comment that says, this is what's going on with them this week. And so I have to render that every week. And it's not a big render. It's a 2.5 minute video, and I have a template built for it. But I still have to go back through my notes and figure out, okay, who's actually going to be top billing this week, and then build that out. So I would say all told, writing, whiteboard, rendering that intro is probably about 10 hours. I probably spend about 10 hours a week on it, just from the creation of assets perspective beyond the learning perspective.
Yeah, I think that's probably again probably the largest part of it. I mean, there is the 2.5 hour kind of
Yeah,
presentation
that's
of
the
it.
easy
But yeah,
part.
there's a lot of it. It's the easy part. You just, I can get this out of the way now. That all that kind of background work is where that's the base of the iceberg there, right? It's
Yeah, that is the base of the
no one
iceberg.
sees
That's
it
a
at
great
all. It's just
analogy.
kind of it's just kind of there and pretty, and then you run into it, and then it's all over.
And I mean, it's worth it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the people who are there, you know, I don't look at numbers, but I see the number when I look at whatever because it's there. Every tool has a number. Like they want you to care about your metrics, and I get like you know between 20 and 30 live people that are there every week, and then I pull pretty decent numbers on YouTube to watch VODs, and those VODs are also there for everyone who misses because it is like a TV show for them at this point where they miss, they're not gonna know what's gonna happen next week, so they have to catch up. Um, I just wish television had done that when I was younger. It was like you missed. That's that.
Yeah. Just gonna please. No, it's gone. Bye. Uh, that was the worst, man. Watching TV
Yeah.
shows as a kid, and you went out one afternoon with your parents, and you've missed out, and you couldn't see that for like another 6 months, and then
Yep.
everyone at school's talking about it. It's like, oh man, why?
I actually cut school one time to see an episode of the original Transformers because I knew it was going to happen. Me and my friends walked. Sorry, mom. We walked to the bus stop and then ditched and went back to my friend's house, knowing his family was already gone to work for the day, and then caught Transformers. And then we're like, "Yeah, we saw it." It's like 8 in the morning. Like, what do we do the rest of the day? We hadn't thought past that point. 'Cause we we're like 9 or something like that. We're like, "Yeah, the school's probably going to call and tell them we're not there." But definitely done
What
that.
time do you start school?
When I was a kid, and this is 80s and 90s, when I was in primary and middle and high school, it was get to the bus stop by 7:30 in the morning. So it
Okay,
was
righto.
get up, have your breakfast, have your put on the clothes your mom picked out for you, and walk. And for me, it was probably about a 6 or 7 minute walk to the bus stop. And all my friends would just lived on the same street. We just kind of just walk down and amalgamize together on our way up there. And then 7:30, we're like, nah, we're gonna go ditch out and go watch Transformers this morning. Only did that a couple times, but yeah, we didn't think the
Yeah, I
plan through.
yeah, you just kind of get this. Oh, it's like a I'm up with all the analogies. It's like a dog chasing a car and it stops. It's like
Yeah, I've caught it. Now what do I do?
yeah, what do I do? Just I used to. I mean, I used to have to catch a bus in because I used to live out in the country. It's like a 45-minute bus ride in for me. So I just wait. Like the bus literally stopped outside my house, and I just there with a neighbor. He had a slingshot and a ton of marbles, and we had like it was a wooden back, so we just peppered this entire bus shelter. It's just like full of marbles. It was the best thing. It was the only way to waste time. But yeah, if I skipped class, the bus driver knew, and like got on my parents because I couldn't go anywhere. So if I
Yeah,
wasn't
it's
there,
like
he's
right
like, this
there.
kid isn't here. Yeah, it's like you've got to be home somewhere. It's
I
never got
think the
much of the
system
opportunity.
evolved over time. Like once I was in junior high and high school, where they like required the call from your parents to inform them that you were not attending. Otherwise, they were gonna activate the whole truancy system and track you down. And 8 years old, 9 years old, we didn't think about stuff like that. It's like there's a TV show you want to watch.
I once had my cousin. Just while we're on this subject, I never get to tell the story. My cousin, she decided to not go to her school, and then like skip her classes and then come to my school instead. It was the weirdest thing. Like, she's like, she just jumped on the bus. She's like, I'm gonna come to your school today, and I got about midway through the day, or midway through the morning, and you hear the teacher walking down the hall because like the news was there. They called her parents and like her dad literally like picked her up and just like dragged her into the car. So you're going back to your school. Slammed the door and off he went. But it was the weirdest thing because you just got like, oh, I'm hanging out with you today. I'm like,
My
okay. I
dad
was
was a
like,
my dad was a cop when I was a kid, so rule breaking was a no.
yeah, that would
And
have been. Do you find
no,
did that make you rebellious as a teen?
no.
No,
Well, yeah.
really.
When I got to be, I think so. My dad was a Secret Service agent before he was like U.S. Secret Service protected the
Oh
president, Secret
wow,
Service
right.
agent. He's also a veteran. He served in Vietnam, and then he became a local cop in his hometown. He got married, came home, and And there I am. But I think I also had an intelligence grandfather. He worked for the CIA. So
It
I
is
had this
really in your blood, isn't it?
yeah, I had this really deep discipline, and it is discipline's not a bad word. Discipline's a good thing because if I wasn't disciplined, I wouldn't make a 10-hour, pregame for a podcast every week. But
Right?
I
Yeah.
think I think that discipline was something I realized early on was a good thing. Like you can really frame accomplishing things around this. Now there certainly are times where my parents' rules made no sense. Like why are you telling me this is as far as I can go at this age, or why is my bedtime at this time? And I don't like those things. Um, but as I became a teenager, yes, certainly. I mean, I don't think there's a period where really too many teenagers don't say to hell with your rules, and I'm going to go define this whole thing for myself. And I certainly did that. But both my parents were pretty, I wouldn't say strict or overbearing, but they had a plan in mind, just like I had a plan
Right.
in mind, and you're going to have a plan
Yeah.
in mind for your kids. And they wanted that plan followed through because they could understand the variables within their plan. And whenever someone acts out of that plan, it really screws that up for them and it makes the stress level go
Yeah.
up for them. And as kids, you don't realize that. When my kids would kind of break out of the plan, I'd be like, oh no, how do we handle this now? And I think that's more of there's certainly a rebellious side that's significantly damaging that kids take. I never really went down that path, but I did disrupt my parents' master plan quite often. There were
Yeah.
just times where it's like, I don't want to do the thing you want me to do.
I'd say my parents met in the military. Funnily enough, mom was a nurse and dad was a tank operator, and on dad's side, the military goes way back a fair bit. And
Yeah,
I just ended up finding issues with authority. I was like, you tell me what to do, I'm going to do the complete opposite. It's like, don't do that. I'm like, okay, pushing the button now. Thanks. You
yeah.
made me do this.
It's funny you say that because obviously the military demands conformity and discipline and the respect for authority. But the job I chose kind of got to do what we wanted most of the time.
Nice.
Um, the job I chose was a job, and I can't go into too many details on it, but it was a job in which we were sent to a place with a plan that never worked and pretty much told to figure it out. And we were on our own, 4 man team that just was trying to accomplish a mission. And so when we would come back, the place where we were stationed, I lived in Japan for a while, I was stationed there. We were forward deployed, which means we're assigned to a unit somewhere else, and we lived there, and that base supported us. So we kind of were attached to a squadron that was responsible for us, but we weren't really a part of it. And so we were just like we were like the step cousins around there. We could show up for things that we wanted to. We could do kind of do whatever we wanted. And the Air Force and the Army and everyone else, when they're in their posts or the garrisons, they kind of just work on their 9 to 5 Monday through Friday schedules. But we had just been out someplace for 36 days living in the dirt or something like that. So we get home, it was like, no, we're taking 10 straight days off. Leave us alone. And that's the rebellious side, right? Because that doesn't conform with anything that the military expects from you, and the commanders just like leave them alone. They do a job that you don't want to know about, and so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I suppose
I
you get
kind
that like the kind of allowance to blow off steam because you
exactly the blow off steam part was a dangerous part. I have absolutely paid a toll booth attendant in Japan when we had spent all of our money with a 6 pack of beer. Like we were driving back north
yeah.
to our base from where we were in a city called Hachinohe, and we were spent all our money. We didn't realize it, but all of our money in our wallets was just gone, and we were on a road that required us to pay when we got off of it. And we had beer in the car, and we pulled up, and a couple of us spoke decent Japanese, and we asked the guy, "Hey, would you just take a 6 pack of beer if you hit the button?" And we handed it out the window, and you hear ding, and we're gone before he thought twice about it.
That is fantastic. I think honestly, beer is the best currency.
Yep. Except there's
Yeah,
there's qualities of that currency because we gave him Asahi Dry, which is like Japanese Budweiser, I think.
yeah. It's probably the perfect description of acai dry. Actually, I've had it. I've had it once or twice, and it's not. It's not pleasant. It's not
It's
terrible. It's
not
just
bad,
great.
but in terms of common Japanese beers, I would much rather have like a Kirin or something like that, something that actually has some flavor to it. Because Asahi is really like there's alcohol in this water, we promise.
like a canoe. It's fucking close to water. Uh, so back to your content a little bit.
Yeah.
So you've covered French Revolution.
Well, we're in the middle of
Um,
it. We're actually in probably the first third
you're
of
in
it
the
still.
right. So you're in that at the moment. You've done some SpaceX stuff as well. So I'm just browsing through your channel to see what else you've kind of covered. Is there
Well,
anything else that I'm missing? I feel
um,
like I'm missing a
well,
bit.
I mean, historically, the purpose of what I did with streaming initially was to find a revenue mechanism to drive revenue toward veterans causes.
Right.
Savage Queen Madriel is my best friend. She's also one of my mods. We talk a lot about what's the best way to kind of leverage what we do to do good things. So I got partnered with Streamloots when they first really got started. I've been a partner there. Like we got partnered within a month because just I create all the cards by hand, and you can tell there's something that goes into it, and then the way in which they interact with the stream is very unique. Like I do all the coding to make very specific things happen. And what we did there was I was streaming Darkest Dungeon, which if you've never played that game, they just passed 5 million total units sold, and they're a great small studio based in Vancouver called Red Hook, and they got a sequel coming out. But Darkest Dungeon is one of those roguelikes where it's like this game hates you and get used to it. And it's extremely difficult. So what I did is I turned the difficulty up with Streamloots and kind of said, here are ways you can mess with me. And then also all of the characters were named after viewers, so they all had a buy-in. Like they all had a vested interest in this game, not killing their character. And so
Yeah,
we used
I
that.
have heard about this. It's brilliant.
We've used it to to create a system where buy 3 packs of cards, and you can use these cards. They all have a meaningful effect. Like you can strip provisions from me, or you can force me to take your party member with me, or you can force me to not take your party member with me. There's a ton of things that you can do. Make yourself immune for a week. There's something like 50 cards we made, and they were so popular that we were able to do like close to 400 pack buys a stream, which is insane for Streamloots.
Wow,
Yeah, it
that's
was a
nuts.
lot because Streamloots introduced their crafting system, which said you can buy these cards and break them into parts and then make the ones you want. And I had one guy who I won't name, but he knows who he is, who watches this, who just every time I came to a curio in Darkest Dungeon, he made me open it, and I was like, ah. It just made the game so much harder because those curios mess with you in that game. But when we decided that, we thought about doing another Darkest Dungeon run after we really finished it. We went 240 weeks, which is really long in that game. You can beat that game much faster, but we kind of drew it out because we were telling a story. And I think we hit something like 47 episodes, something like that when we completed it. And when we got done, the kind of group, it's kind of like my head shed all said, do we want to do this again? And I was like, yeah, because what else are we going to do? You're doing space, but there's not a great way to tie the cards to space. And um, then the Mixer Twitch thing happened. It was like, well, hey, subs are a revenue source and bits are a revenue source. And how can we make that into donations for because we donate all of our money to Disabled American Veterans Charitable Service Trust after the taxes get paid because I don't have a charitable organization or anything like that. So when we went to Twitch and there was another usable revenue source in subscriptions, um, we decided that maybe this is the time to do history because they knew that history was likely going to kill everything else. Like there's just no time with the amount of work that goes into it to sit down and do an 8-hour game stream, 3 times a week or anything like that. It's just not possible. So we turned that over and said, okay, here's history. And the revenue's gone down a little bit, but we're still trying to figure out other ways to bring some of the card elements back into it just so that people can do something more than gifts, 10 subs to somebody they don't know and
Yeah,
drop bits.
I imagine having like a less interactive form of like kind
Yeah.
of participating, especially when it comes to like using a monetary system, like the Streamlabs loot cards, which I've seen.
We've come up with some inventive ways. Like there are cards that like it's a heavy metal thing, and everyone knows I'm a heavy metal guy. So we've always used the riffs from Brutal Legend as something you could just play whenever you want.
Yeah.
And I've also taken snippets of Bill and Ted films and made them into small videos that play over my camera. So anytime you can play Excellent or get the Grim Reaper out or get Napoleon out or things like that. And over the course of the stream or the series, we have started to track who's dead because people get killed or die of natural causes, but also who's left the nation of France. We have like an upper board that shows this, but no one ever sees it. They have to ask me to go up to that portion of the whiteboard. So what we did this actually started this last episode yesterday is I created another reward where you can actually bring a small slideshow up of these individuals on the lower portion of the screen. And the tricky thing is that Darkest Dungeon, I didn't care how much of the screen got overlaid, right? I didn't care if if we did something and it covered the screen for a minute because it's just a video game. But with the history thing, I'm really apprehensive about covering the information. So I have this framing that all the stuff happens in so that it doesn't it never impacts your ability to see what I'm talking about in the middle of a sentence while somebody may be like we have one where there's a guillotine that drops over the chat frame and it cuts, the Gilius's head off and it screams when it happens. And I've always tried to make sure with the history thing that all the interactivity we're trying to build back in doesn't impact the ability of the person's, it doesn't impact their experience with the actual material.
Especially with you translating that to VOD material as well. I can
Yeah.
imagine if you're not there in the moment, you may miss because you're going from Twitch to Twitch to YouTube. I mean, I think
Yep.
you've got your chat there as well. But yeah, you're not there in that moment, so there may be like some context lost, even if you are there,
That's
kind of
actually
enjoying that part. Yeah.
that's a huge point for anybody that is their intention is to not only live stream but preserve and have viewership on of those live streams via recordings on YouTube is preserve your chat. You need to have the chat visible. Come up with an inventive way to do it where it's kind of out of the way, but there's a constant stream of consciousness from your viewers that they can see. Because as a streamer, you oftentimes will read what a viewer says or read a question and simply reply to that question. And a viewer on a VOD doesn't have that frame of reference when you're speaking about that unless your chat's present. So you have to do that. If you ever care about that recorded viewership, you have to find a way to make your chat present on the screen and not just on your BRB screen or your just starting screen, but come up with a way to make it happen. I've seen some streamers do it really well. Like 7-7, he's a graphic artist on the West Coast, and he's got his chat built into his comic book style framing really well. But it does come
I have
down.
watched some of his stuff. It's I love his layout. It's actually really really cool.
Yeah, his
Considering that
layout.
like he's doing like a lot of artistic stuff, and you don't want that to draw away from the main thing he's working on for the most part.
But he's made the
He
layout
managed,
artistic, right? He's made that
yeah,
layout
right.
completely an art piece of art, so that the way in which he has his integrations overlaid into it make it look like it is a part of it, and that takes a lot of skill to do. It's for me, I had a frame for Darkest Dungeon that was themed Darkest Dungeon, so it felt like it was a part of the game. And for history, you can't make something feel like it's a part of history. So what was the hook? And it was Bill and Ted because people know that. Oh, I see
Yes,
this,
on
and
that
it like
pop
yep.
culture frame of reference. Yeah,
So I know a lot of people like I'll use Permanoob as a great example. He loves Borderlands, so everything around his identity within his stream is Borderlands theme, and it works because everything rolls back to that for him. So anybody else, you don't have to theme around a game or anything, but theme around what you're doing. Come up with something that makes sense for the persona you're trying to project.
yeah. I think that's something I struggled with for a while personally, especially when I was early on because I kind of bounced from Destiny for a bit and started doing like more variety content, and I was like, okay, well, what the fuck am I? Like
Yep.
what is me? And like I just had to like took me a minute to kind of figure out. I had to lean into like my more chaotic nature of just everything at once.
I think that's a great trap, right? Where streamers variety streaming is a thing. It's very different than being a game focused streamer where I get on every day and play Dead by Daylight or Fortnite or Destiny or whatever. And these people are getting up every day and this is their job, and their viewers are expecting them to play this same game all the time, which I can't imagine being anything but tedious. And they build their identity around that game. And there's a risk in that, right? Where when D2 launched, you were there because you just said you played Destiny 2. I've been playing Destiny since the beginning, and I quit in Destiny 2. Imagine being one of those I can't remember. Like there was a guy who was like hand cannoning the Wrath of Machine raid at the end of D1, and he was one of the most well known streamers out there for Destiny. Destiny 2 hits, and Destiny's popularity tanked. Your identity's tied to that game. Your revenue is tied to that game. And if no one wants to watch
Yeah.
it anymore, well, boom, you're done. Imagine
It's
if the legs had swept out on our Fortnite on Ninja in year 3. What would he be right now? Probably nowhere near where he is. I
no,
mean,
no, no, nowhere
financially.
near. Oh yeah, he's absolutely loaded. I need to ask though, your name, is that
Yes,
yeah, it is the hand
it
cannon?
is the hand cannon from
Because
Destiny, and there's a story
I
behind it.
do tell, because I've always been curious, but I've never asked because I've seen it. I've gone, I know that name from this game from that gun,
Hmm. So
but I was never quite sure.
when Destiny 1 dropped, I loved its world, and I have always loved Destiny's like lore, even though there are plenty of push your glasses up lore nerds out there that can talk whole lot less about it. Um, when we were playing, though, I was playing with my sons. So long story short, I got divorced, and I was distanced from my sons whenever they were in high school. So we found video games to be a great way to bridge that gap. When they had free time, Xbox was there. It was easy to set up, and we get in a party and play Destiny, and we were playing Destiny, and it was the early days of it, and I had never seen this hand cannon before, and um, this gun drops, and I said, I just got this hand cannon called Lord High Fixer. This name is awesome, and my sons were like, "That's the perfect name for you." And the reason is because I'm intrinsically someone who fixes things. My job is making a very complex IT apparatus work, and then within the Outlaws community, a few of us come up with solutions to things all the time, like how do we build this in a bot or something like that. And I'm fixing things or reverse engineering things is very much in my nature. So um, the fixer aspect of that name just called out to my kids, and then the whole Lord High thing kind of called out to me from a historical perspective. It was like, here's a title that feels very elan and august, and it just feels like epic would be the word. And that's great because I was using variations of like containing my last name and things like that, and it gave me a way to become really anonymous on the internet, but something that people who play the same game as I was playing would instantly recognize. And so that's where it came from. But then Lord High Fixer just became kind of cliche to say over and over. So it got whittled down to Fixer and Fix, which is perfectly fine. That's what I prefer now anyway. I actually have thought about um, stripping it down and taking the Lord High off. And I have done that on Xbox where it's Captain Fix, because that's the only thing I play with respect to Xbox is Sea of Thieves. But other than that, it's just that's where it comes from. My kids were kind of like, Dad, this name makes a whole lot of sense for you. You should probably think about using it. And then, of course, someone had it, so I had to add the X to
Oh,
it.
that was the extra X, was it?
Yep, someone had it on
Yep.
Xbox, so I took the extra X.
Bastards. Um, I tried to have just Puppies. As a I went to go drop the Deft a while ago, and I couldn't get it. I was like, I almost messaged them because it was like one of those inactive accounts that had
Yeah.
been inactive for years and years and years. Like I could just like just message them, say, hey, by the way, because the same as you, I got shortened to pups or puppies, so I was like, I'll change it,
Well,
and
the
I can't do
benefit to
that.
having the two X's now is no one has that. No one has that. Like I can go. I have my
Yeah.
email around it. I have most of the things I care about. Steam name, everything with respect to streaming. Everything was just, hey, it's there. No one has it with the two X's, and I grabbed them all up as quick as I could because no one had thought to do it that way, I guess.
So talk to me about Big Top, because I mean,
Bigtop Outlaws.
I've been around you guys in and out for a little while now. As more of
We want the whole
a passive.
story or what we do.
Um,
The whole story
well,
is not that long.
call me, call me, call me B. Let's go a little bit of both.
Okay, so when I was younger, in my 20s, back when older gamers were people in their 20s, there was a group of Halo gamers called Cirque de Geezers, and Geezers of gaming was considered 25 or older. And so it was a way to keep us away from the kids. We didn't want to play with someone's kids and have someone's parents be really mad that we were swearing in voice chat or something. So we just kind of played Halo together and got really good. And during the course of the time with that clan, a couple of us kind of branched off and became very, very, very good, like competitively good at the NHL series, the EASHL. Like we play, you play your position. We were winning championships in that system. And then the what is now old gen, but the next gen conversation kind of came along, and there was a lot of debate around DRM content policy management and which consoles we primarily moved to, and that debate got heated within that group. And so several of us were a little vocal about privacy protections. That we were booted. We were just tossed out of that group. We've been in for a long time, for 5-10 years. And so the people who were booted out decided that we were going to form our own little group to kind of continue what we were doing, especially from the hockey perspective. And that became Bigtop, referencing back to Cirque de Geezers, Cirque, and then Outlaws, because we were no longer a part of them. And that's where the name derives from. But we've always been a group throughout, and this has been an evolving form since then. But it started off as a group of people who just wanted to play a game together and not have to deal with the world's nonsense and look out for each other. And I mean, these guys looked out for me during my divorce. I was broke, and one of them, one of these guys who had gamed with, paid my mortgage payment the last month I didn't have it before I could move out of my house when I was getting divorced. But over time, it's become this place where we're famous for giving people we like a whole lot of shade. That's how we will inform you that we believe you're a good person, is we will make your life difficult through your own openings that you leave us with respect to jokes. You can surely ask Perm or Dustin or people that in Gilly, they take the brunt of that. And we've kind of formed lore around the idea, like our own internal, as Mads would say it, we have a book of jokes that are just so long known and so used that they're just part of how we communicate at this point. Streaming brought in a whole lot of new people, where it used to be a group of guys who were playing, a group of people who were playing Destiny and NHL and Halo, and were largely Xbox focused. It got broadened by streaming, where you went out and you were able to see like-minded people, and you were able to say, hey, look, we're not a stream team. We're not a clan. We're not looking to organize you in a way you don't want to be organized. What we want to do is say, hey, look, we are very much like you, and you are very much like this group of people. And while we may give you hell in your chat or in a video game, we will forever have your back whenever you need it. An example of this was one of our members last year had significant medical issues where they were in the hospital for weeks, and the bill from that came out, as it's America, so of course it was ridiculous. And they whether they had it or not, we're talking 5-figure medical bills. And the instant reaction from within this group was, what do we do? How do we at least take a chunk out of that out? And so GoFundMe went up, and the very first donation that GoFundMe was close to $700. And over the course of it, we ended up giving the individual nearly $3,000 to say, we don't know how much your bills are, but you're our brother and we love you, and take this and make sure that you're able to still pay your bills and pay it down. And that's how it always works. So like Dustin and Gilly were streamers that we met and said, hey, look, we don't want you. Dustin is just a funny guy and Gilly is another coder, and we've taken everyone in and amalgamized their skill sets to where we've created this community. It's like, this is home. This is where you come when you have a problem, when you need to know the people here are not going to BS you. They don't have an agenda. We are just your friends, and it works. So we have dedicated channels in our Discord. Instead of like you having your streaming Discord, there are numerous of us who base our streaming out of our Discord, and we all have channels that we can say, this is what's going on with my stream. And it allows everyone to stay concentrated, as opposed to, I have 50 Discords I have to check to see if my one streamer I follow has posted when he's going to stream today. Everything's there. And we also run a channel where we do tech help. Like, I want to know how to build a giveaway system within this bot, or how do I automatically capture my Twitch clips to a local drive that exists, and we pin solutions, and people can go through instead of having to reinvent the wheel and find like, oh yeah, go check the pin in this channel and it's this one right here, and follow the instructions. And more recently, with the rise of all the hate bot crap on Twitch, we've actually worked from some GitHubs to create a script that will Auto ban about 750,000 accounts on your Twitch channel to make sure they don't get in.
Oh,
To
nice.
Yeah,
Very
to keep
handy.
just to keep, like, I'm not worried about it. I know that those efforts tend to focus on women, but we have women streamers in our community, and we certainly want to protect them, not from you need our protection, but from we can prevent this from happening because we have some people here whose
We have the
technical skill
tools
set, yeah,
available if
we
you
can
want to
build
use
it.
them. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so it takes about, I don't know, 40 hours to run the script because there's just so many names in the array. But it does and has stopped these people from coming in and doing what they do to the members of our community. And that's kind of what it is. It is a commune of individuals who see each other as near family and support each other as near family. I mean, we have had our differences within the thing, but we intrinsically believe in speaking truthfully to each other. Like, when there is a problem, just have the conversation. No one's going anywhere. But what we don't want, and what's never really been an issue, is where people in other groups will form small cliques and build animosity toward other people. Like, the jokes are all out in the open, and so are the criticisms. If we have an issue with something that someone's done, we'll say so. And we're not going to say, well, I really didn't like how so and so said this about this thing or this person. No, we're going to go and say, look, this thing was said, it offended an individual. This is why it offended them, or whatever, and deal with it in out in the open, so that there's never a question of where you stand, and it works really well. But it also helps that we're all adults. We're not dealing with.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing though. Like, look, like listening to that, it's like this is like how groups in general should like kind of govern themselves, right? It's like
Mhm.
just have it out there. None of this backstabby talk behind each other's back crap. Just have it out there, have the conversation, and just kind of move through that with each other. Because
And
I think you'll find as well is when I mean, I find this with what I do. If you have an issue with someone, you work through it with them, and generally that,
mhm.
for the most part, will help you work together better.
Yeah, and I think
So
the
there's
thing about
growth through that.
conflict management in general like that is you can never approach it as a debasement of the individual. You can never go to that person and say you're wrong, because the natural human reaction to that is no, I'm not, right? And let me defend
Yeah, yeah,
myself, and here's all the reasons why. It is, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about what happened and how you felt it was being done versus how someone else perceived it being done, and let's understand the differences there, that people are different, and not that you were wrong, but that there is an opportunity for self improvement across the board here. Somebody can be a little less sensitive or understand your intent, and someone else can say, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way." I can self evaluate and make sure that I don't do the same thing again. But that is an adult thing to do. Um, and I think the other thing that's really critical is we do have like an upper leadership group within the Outlaws, but those are people, anybody can be in that group, assuming you do like two things. You're there long enough and you contribute meaningfully. Like, if you're just a lurker who hangs out and takes advantage of some of the tools we have, we know who you are and it's not a big deal. Take advantage. You're hanging out in streams, we don't care. But if you're actively working to better the philosophy of what we do, and over time you do that not with a self-interested perspective but with a community interested perspective, then you're going to be invited to come in, because we're going to value that perspective. We're going to value your eyes and the way you see things, because no one believes that the way in which they understand it to be is the only way it can be, and that an amalgamized compromise is the best way to see the best solution for a group. And so anytime any decision, like, people always point at me like, oh, he's a leader. There is no leader. There is a group of individuals who make communal decisions that we believe after discussion are in the best interest of other people, and they're never reached without a consensus. No one ever arbitrarily walks off and says, oh, I'm going to do this. It just doesn't work that way. Your
I
mic,
love
there
seeing
we go.
groups like that that work so
I
quickly
think it's your
together.
gate, by the way. It's the initial speaking,
Is
like the
it?
first
Is it the
two or
initial
three
speaking?
syllables. Yeah,
Interesting, because my gate's on like 0.9.
but like I was saying, your mic's not there, and then it cut back in. So, but anyway, yeah, I don't want to
Yeah,
belabor that point.
yeah, that's fine. I've lost track.
We were talking about
uh,
outlaws and adult communities.
That's right. It's just good to see. It's good to see communities out there like that, because you don't see them that often. Like, I
No.
mean, in my few years of streaming, I've seen plenty of stream teams come and go, and plenty of stream teams just like blow up at the drop of a hat over the smallest thing, and it
Mm-hmm.
just devolves into chaos and falls apart. I've been like kind of caught not caught in the middle, but like being part there in a few communities when that's happened, and I'm just kind of like, well, I'm out. See you
I
later,
think
and
that
just totally distanced myself from it because it was just like it devolved into like name calling and
yeah. See, I think the
blowouts on
difference is
Twitter
that
and shit.
people join a quote stream team out of a self interest, right? They want to
Yeah,
leverage the connections that are potentially there from others who may promote them in their channels. That's kind of how stream teaming works. Whereas the way we have always worked is you do whatever you want. We're not going to tell you to say this or do this or shout out this person or whatever. Just don't, maintain some sort of civic decorum is all we're really required to do. But we're never going to tell you how to do things. And we will help you build tools and scripts and all the things you want to do to make your stream better. And that's where it's like, okay. And then once we've helped you get there, with we're not asking you to throw even a Bigtop Outlaws logo anywhere. But once we've kind of helped you in a little way or integrated you in a little way, what's okay, turn that around and come back and help the next person or help someone who has a different problem where your skill set is applicable to that person. That's the idea. You don't need to be like, for instance, Gilly and I have automated things where we shout out people that we know their static schedules at the end of every stream, but not everybody has to do that. Uh, you know, Dustin comes up with off the wall ideas that are great theoretical ideas where but he doesn't have the code skill set to build the idea where that's where, someone like Gilly or I would come in and like, okay, well, that's great. And I can't think like that, but I can make that happen. And that's why it works really well.
a ragtag team of like really specific skills.
Yeah,
That
it's a
work
toolbox
amazing,
of really
surprisingly well
odd
together.
shaped
Yeah.
tools.
You know, the tool sheds with like the shapes in the wall, and they're just like
I think
tons
part
of
of it too
weird.
is like me, Mega Jake, who streams for Extra Life. He actually raised 10 grand, and the year's not even over for a neonatal care monitor at Beaumont Children's Hospital this year. Sturfer supports that with him. Perm supports that. I have me doing DAV. We have people who are doing work that's selfless, and it's not just me that does charitable streaming. We have a lot of people in the
Yeah,
community who are like, I'm not doing this for money. They get it. They're not, they have day jobs and families. They're not going to become the next, I have 100,000 viewers on my Twitch channel, and that's not why they stream. They stream because they like the community and the camaraderie and the hilarity that can ensue from that. So I think that also maybe what defines it a little bit differently, because there's a lot of stream teams out there who form a stream team and they're like, this is our way to the big time. It's like the statistical chances that happening to you as a streamer is so astronomically small. You should certainly have a backup plan.
oh yeah, definitely. It's not exactly something that you can rely on, given how
I mean,
not
you're
unreliable.
dependent on a developer and a platform you have no control over, right? It's not like
Yeah,
you own your own business. You are an independent contractor who's leveraging the assets of others to produce your content. That is what a streamer does. And so you are dependent on that developer or that publisher not making a mistake, Bungie, or
sorry,
or
fine.
you're dependent upon Twitch coming up with solutions to serious social problems they have on their platform before people finally have enough. Like with this hate bot thing, or we don't want to get into controversial things, where like hot tub streaming, there's these things that some people look at and be like, what's this here for? This is not why I came to this platform. And some people will go a step further and say, and I don't want to be here anymore. When you base your job
Yeah.
and your life around that level of volatility, you can't have that be the only plan.
No, no. I mean, it's great when you're 20 something young and you've got nothing kind of going on, but when you get older, you look at it like this isn't viable. Like there
Mm-mm.
is like trying to stay relevant, like even slightly
Yeah.
is so much work, and then doing everything else on top of that, it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's too many variables for one thing to go wrong to bring it all tumbling down. It's a very very shaky kind of basis to put everything on. But I mean, you look at
It's
people like Ninja who saw that and kind of like they branched out, right? And they
mm-hmm.
got into like advertising and kind of pushed into that more
He gave himself more
more
than one
relevant
leg on his
space.
stool,
Yeah,
to use an analogy which you like. You should certainly have, and he was not stupid in the way in which he did that. He saw an opportunity as well at Mixer to just give himself capital, and he did it. And
yeah,
within a year it was gone, but he had his money.
Yeah, he and Shroud really came out. I think they're about the only ones that won in this entire situation.
Yep,
Out of a whole platform of staff and streamers and viewers, two guys came out of that with millions.
pretty much. And Facebook, they got paid even though they don't need it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I mean, Microsoft got its tech that I wanted, so we're all good there.
Yeah, I actually think they leveraged some of the tech they got from Beam, and that's what you see aspects of in Teams now, where the Teams,
Hey,
corporate chat platform, they picked up some ideas and some core skill set technologies from Mixer, and were able to integrate that into Teams. You'll notice that Teams kind of took off in two ways. One, in the 6 months lead up to the pandemic, and then obviously the pandemic making work from home a thing. But the Teams has certainly picked up some elements of Mixer's technology for sure.
yeah, it's been a while. I used Teams the other day for the first time, for an interview, for work related things, and yeah, the guy's like, "Oh, we'll just use Teams," and I'm like, "What?" So I'm so used to things like Zencaster and Discord and to some
Yeah.
extent Zoom, like when that was kind of blowing up for a while
Ugh.
there. Yeah,
Zoom is
I used it
so
like
not
twice.
secure, man. Like I
No,
had
man, it's
companies,
dicey.
I dealt with other companies who they didn't have the base capital to get a platform like a 365 platform like Microsoft's Teams, and they're like, yeah, let's join a Zoom call. Like, how about I send you a Teams invite and you come over here where it's actually encrypted, where it's not just if I have the link I can get in there and record everything.
Yeah.
It was I refused to get in Zoom calls. I was like, no, 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 no.
I did it twice. One was for like a big group meetup of just people hanging out, and we did two of those, and then I don't know, Zoom just kind of disappeared for me. It just didn't happen. I was like,
Well,
okay, that's
Google stood
fine.
up their collaborative work environment, and that's general free set of tools. And then Microsoft for large enterprises was like, here's our chance to kill Skype and bring out this new thing we've got. And from my perspective professionally, Teams is critical to what we do now because we are still not back in the office, and we won't be going back to the office. Like they have said, holy crap, look at how much money we're saving by not leasing office space, and they said stay home. And so I will not go back to the office. And Teams has been pretty critical to that because it enables us to be collaborative without being in front of each other.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. Coming out of the last couple of years, is businesses going, well, we don't need to spend that money. We can like, here's the stuff you need. Go home and do it. You seem to be more productive anyway.
Yeah.
You're getting happier workers. People are getting more time with their families. They're not at the
Yep.
office late. And it's really incredible for people and businesses. Gets a little dicey in the economy. I work in the city. At a restaurant. And now that people aren't in the office, which is
Yeah.
where we were surrounded by, we're really starting to see the side effects of that because we're not getting our usual
Yeah.
lunchtime
Your
rush.
lunch
And
foot traffic isn't there.
yeah, it's pretty well non-existent now. The place is like a ghost town, which is crazy.
One
So
of the
hopefully
things that
there's a balance, Jock. But
one of the things I tried to do during the pandemic was there's a bunch of locally owned restaurants and catering services around here that transitioned to the whole delivery model during the pandemic. As I always tried to say, 3 times a week, make sure you're still doing what you did before. You're just not going there. You're having it delivered. So I've maintained that because I felt like I had that civic responsibility to say, I get it. I'm not there, but I still want you to have the money that you would have normally gotten from me, just to make
yeah,
sure that your business doesn't go under. Because if we ever do return to a world where we can sit down safely in a restaurant with each other, I'd really like you to be there. Um, Work's not so much because where I worked, there wasn't a whole lot of anything but chains, and I was not too invested in those places. But I did try to take some level of civic responsibility for the local mom and pops places because I love those places where the best food comes from.
you go to these chain places. The food's just like must be just crap. And someone that
Yeah.
works with food, it's something that I really enjoy.
Well.
Is just like going to these really small places where they're independently owned,
Mhm.
and it's sometimes it's not the best food, but knowing that it's like made with just that little bit of love makes it that like slightly bit better than just
Yeah. I mean,
normal.
I like diners. Like I like I like old school Americana diners where they got the fry cook in the back and the wheel with the menu, the order on it, and I love that feel. A place that has a counter and you can sit down and there's two places near me like that, and I the food is way better than say like a Denny's or an IHOP or any place that's a chain for sure. Um, but is it like gourmet food? No, but you're not paying a gourmet price in those places either. You're paying $8 for you know eggs, hash browns, bacon, and sausage, and I'm more than happy to pay for that because the portion size is correct and it tastes pretty good. And I don't know, I've always had an affinity for those places.
It's legends like you that keep people like me going. So thank you. um, you're keeping me in a job, man. But we might wrap it up there, Fix.
All right,
Thank you so much for joining and having a chat with me. It's been really fun, just like
I
hearing
appreciate
hearing
the
your
opportunity.
story and your kind of your approach to things. It's kind of nice and a little bit refreshing.
My mom always said
So
this to kind of give you a closer. The world is should be very happy that I came out one of the good guys. Because if I was one of these cynical jerks that was only out for things for oneself, then the impact I would have is much less meaningful than if you're out there actively doing good and helping others do good. And I think that if more people did that and just had that simple philosophy, how can I not just talk about it, but do something and have a good impact, then we'd be much better off. And that's kind of how I do things.
wonderful. So for the people at home who are listening, playing along, where can they find your stuff? Where can they find you?
Well, it's twitch.tv/Lord High Fixer with two X's. YouTube, just go to that Twitch page and find the YouTube panel off the chat page. It's down there. It's a whole lot easier than giving you that pseudo random link that I hate, that I won't change because they won't let me.
You should.
Twitter
I think
is,
you're eligible now. Actually, I was looking
I
at your
tied it to
numbers.
an old name I don't want. You can't change it from that name to a new name. You have to use the old name again.
Same.
Twitter is at Lord High Fixer with two X's, but more importantly, at Bigtop Outlaws, which is an automated Twitter account that senses when members from our community go live and will tell you within 15 minutes on Twitter that they are live. So if you don't like using your Twitch alerts, you can use that Twitter account and see it in your stream. Like, oh, somebody who's not fixed, who's part of that great community of people, is also live, and go discover some of them as well.
Wonderful. And for those who are looking for those, all those links will be down below in the description for you to find. So to make things a lot easier, because I don't know about you, but I can't remember things and I don't like
They're
typing a
all
lot.
linked off
So
my Twitch panels as well.
clicky clicky, do the thing. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening this week. Something a little bit different. We approached some educational material as opposed to video games, but we did talk about video games for about a minute, which technically still makes us a gaming stream, by the rule of 10%. But if you'd like to find the podcast, you can find us your favorite podcasting platforms. Just search for Two Left Thumbs. You can find us on YouTube via twoleftthumbs.online. You can also find us on Twitter at left_pod and on Instagram at Two Left Thumbs Podcast. And as always, if you've enjoyed the episode, let me know what you think. Give us a review. Apple, follow us on Spotify, all that jazz. Go do it. I hope you guys are enjoying what we do here. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Fix, thank you very much.
It was a
Have a
pleasure. Thanks
fantastic
for having me
week.
on.
We'll chat it next time. See ya.